Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. The Outdoor Adventure Series celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the great outdoors. In this episode, we continue the celebration of the Office of the National Marine Sanctuaries 50 years of ocean conservation and stewardship. Now, our guest today is John Armour. John is the director of NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, our nation's system of underwater parks. In this capacity, John provides a strategic vision for the program and the overall policy direction. John has been with NOAA since 2000, serving as the National Permitting Coordinator. He's been the Chief of Conservation Policy and Planning in that division and the Deputy Director overseeing personnel, policy, and administrative matters for the program. John, it is a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here, Howard. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. As I'm reading the description here, I'm thinking personnel. Oh my God, I can get a job working for John in one of those beautiful marine sanctuaries. I love it.
I'll tell you what, we'd love to have you, Howard. We'd love to have you.
All right. Well, we'll talk about that later. I don't want to put you on the spot. In fact, I put you on the spot, but it is what it is.
It's John, all good. It's the best job in the federal government. I can tell you. We have a lot of fun.
I look at your background. I looked at the background. We had Michelle Johnston on last week. We published her episode on Wednesday. Grace Botita Williamson's going to be on. And I'm thinking, you guys, not only do you get to do great things and help our environment and these wonderful marine sanctuaries, these national parks, but you also get to do really cool stuff. And it's like, it doesn't get any better than that.
It really does not. We get to do cool stuff and we get to work with really cool, passionate, dedicated, innovative people. I think Leela, in addition to Michelle and Grace and Vernon, you're also going to interview, I think, Dr. Leela Hatch as well. Right. And these are just fantastic, dedicated servants with just such a diversity of different disciplines. All four of those people really coming out sanctuaries from a lot of different angles, but all with the same sort of passion and dedication and focus to the mission. And I'll tell you what, as director, I love what I do. I do think I have the coolest job in the federal government, honestly. Like I'm the director of System of Underwater Parks, National Marine Sanctuaries. I mean, come on, how cool is that? But honestly, the whales and the coral reefs and the kelp forests are great, but the people like that you're going to be interviewing and the people that we work with and on our advisory councils and in the communities, the fishermen, the scientists, the conservationists, it's just awesome. We don't always agree on everything, but I love it. I love the people that we work with.
When I look back in my coach training and the graduate degree in leadership, I remember a saying as a great leader, and you can say, yep, Howard, that's me. But a great leader not only models behavior, inspires them, challenges them, gives them the tools to act, but you're there when you're needed, you interact when you're needed, get your hands dirty. But a great leader can also sit back and let the people that he's hired or she's hired, trained, empowered to get the work done. I think sounds like that's what's going on.
I get out of the way, right? Sometimes the best thing you can do as a leader is get out of the way and let the creative people that, like you said, that you have hired and have developed over time, let them do what they do. Support them, give them the top cover when that's needed, but get out of the way and let them do what they do. And the folks that you're interviewing on Team Sanctuaries, those are really great examples of just really talented, dedicated people that don't need me to tell them what to do, when to do it, how to do it at all. It's as much about me just getting out of the way and supporting them and just kind of looking from the side with awe at watching people like Michelle and Leila and Vernon and Grace go to work.
Sure,
Right.
sure. No,
I love it.
it's fantastic. It's very obvious that that's what's going on in these conversations. Now, I would love, before we kind of dive deeper into the National Marine Sanctuaries and the 50th anniversary, if you
Mhm.
could share a little bit about your background to give folks
Sure.
who are still learning about the marine sanctuaries, who are these individuals that are working in this department, and how did you get to where you are today? Now, you don't have to go into the details. I don't care about the grades, but kind of give us the big picture.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're not asking about the grades because that's not what I would lead off with.
Either would I.
Look, I stumbled into this. I didn't growing up. So I grew up in Rhode Island, in on the shores of Narragansett Bay in New England, and I love the ocean. I grew up basically with salt water in my veins, sailing, snorkeling. Learned to scuba dive at age 12 in Newport, Rhode Island. And I had never heard of National Marine Sanctuaries. I decided I went through high school. I wanted to get an undergraduate degree in marine science, which I did from University of South Carolina, go Gamecock. And I still had never heard of sanctuary. I worked for the state of Florida is where after undergrad, I went down and worked, as you said before, I worked for the state of Florida Department of Environmental Protection. It was a great experience. And working at the state and local level is a great way for folks to get their foot in the door if they're interested in ocean and marine conservation. And so that was the path that I went on. And I've heard about sanctuaries I knew about NOAA from college. I knew about NOAA as an agency, and I knew about what it did and all the different aspects of how NOAA contributes to ocean conservation. And so as a state of Florida employee, I was exposed to the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary early on in my career, and I'm like, what is this? That's super cool. And so I was building up a regulatory background with the state of Florida. I was doing, as you mentioned, I was doing regulations and permitting and some compliance and enforcement. And I found a job posting on USA Jobs to work as the permit coordinator for this thing called the National Marine Sanctuary System. I applied and I was lucky enough to get the job. And here I am 22 years later, now the director of the program. And oh man, it's just been such an awesome ride. I really love it.
That's fantastic. And I have to share, when I first met Vernon and Grace, they joined a monthly meeting that the Outdoor Writers of Association of America hosts. This virtual meeting, they were there, and that's where, as I'm listening to Grace and her presentation, Vernon was kind of on the sidelines. And as I'm listening, the light bulbs are going in my head, pop, pop, pop. And so I
Yeah.
said, Vernon, I'd like to chat about this, the podcast. And then I went to, and then I was looking on the website, where are the sanctuaries? And I discovered Florida Keys. And
Mhm.
I have friends that live down there, and I know they're very active in the conservation. There's some other groups, and I'll talk a little bit about that, what's going on locally to help support the mission of the
Yeah.
National Marine Sanctuaries. And I kind of asked them, do you know anybody that works at the National Marine Sanctuary? But and I think they knew somebody, but
Okay.
eventually Vernon and I connected, and the rest is history. And but I love the fact that you have a passion. It's the outdoors, the environment, government, regulatory, and you just, as you said, it's persistence. It's not,
Yeah.
don't worry if yes, you might get turned away, but you
Yeah.
keep going forward. As,
Absolutely.
as you began to gather this experience, you have the credentials. When you first got to the NOAA Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, what were the roles that you had been playing, and how did that increasing levels of experience kind of pave the way for where you're at today?
Yeah. Awesome question. So as I mentioned, my first job was the national permit coordinator. So basically the way sanctuaries work is every sanctuary has its own unique management plan, a set of regulations that are issued to make sure that the the sanctuary itself is meeting the needs of the local community and the local ecosystem, and that they're focused on the most pressing needs there. As part of that management paradigm, the superintendent of each sanctuary has the ability to issue permits for things like scientific research, education, like formal education programs, management, things like that, for activities that would otherwise be the violations of the regulations.
Mhm.
And so I was brought in 2000 to help make sure that from a legal perspective. So I would work a lot with the lawyers, the NOAA attorneys, and I learned a ton right off the bat about what it means to be community based, right? So when we're issuing these permits, we're really having to struggle to make sure that we're meeting the community's needs for, again, things like scientific research and K through 12 education, get people out and get people to gather the information and the data and expose people to these places, but they're doing that in a responsible way through the permitting process. And so I was thrown into it right off the bat, and I really just learned a ton about our history as a program, because I was thrown into, I had to go back and look at legislative history, and I learned a lot from the lawyers that I worked with at the time. And then I learned a lot from very experienced people that were working at our field site about what does it mean to issue a permit in the Florida Keys versus in Monterey Bay versus an Olympic Coast, et cetera. And so I was thrown right into it. I had to be a student of our management plans, a student of our regulations, a student of our implementing legislation. And so I leveraged that knowledge and that experience, as well as the relationships that I had built across the whole system, right? So I was at a headquarters posting, but I had direct relationships with the people that were on the ground implementing our regulations. So it really enabled me to sort of progress in my career fairly quickly to have increasing responsibilities. So I sort of built it up over time, eventually becoming a division chief at headquarters, overseeing the permitting, but also the management plan reviews, the regulations, and other kinds of things, and kind of went from there.
That's fantastic. I am
Yeah.
curious if we could kind of circle back and unpack activity at the local level. And I had
Mhm.
mentioned, or you had mentioned, the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. And I know there's a lot of groups down there.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, besides the permitting, I come in, I want to do some research, I want to do some education.
Right.
What is the engagement between the sanctuary and their staff with the other, let's just say, other community organizations that also have a passion, a mandate for stewardship, conservation?
Mhm.
How do you guys interact with those types of organizations?
Yeah, I mean, really well. The Florida Keys is probably the best example of that. To give you an example right now, we have a number of really close partnerships with a number of institutions that are local or at least regionally, but based in the sort of South Florida area. The Coral Restoration Foundation is one. Marine Lab, which is based out of Sarasota, but has offices down the Keys, as well as many others. The Nature Conservancy is involved. The National Marine Sanctuary Foundation is involved, and all of these groups, and actually the United Way as well,
Really? Wow.
are all engaged in the Florida Keys right now in a collaborative effort that we're calling Mission Iconic Reef. And this is a very ambitious project that NOAA, actually, it's not just our part of NOAA, other NOAA offices. We have really great relationships with the National Marine Fisheries Service, Office of Habitat Conservation, where we're all, just a number of entities are working together to actually restore 7 iconic reefs up and down the Florida Reef Tract, where we're putting divers in the water with the Coral Restoration Foundation, as well as Moat Marine Labs. They're literally putting hundreds of divers in the water, planting corals, removing coral predators, and trying to actually regenerate the reef with species that are going to withstand temperature variations associated with climate change. And it's really inspiring work. I actually got an opportunity to go down there at the beginning of April and
Oh,
see
wow.
some of the work firsthand. And Howard, I got to tell you, it's so inspiring to be for government, to be working with private nonprofits to do something of this scale and this enormity. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And one of the questions I was going to ask, and it, this doesn't have to be the answer, but like the aha moment, I'm thinking you probably have a lot of aha moments through the course
I do.
of a week, a month, a year, and 20
Right,
years. Is
right, right.
all the locations, and just being the director, you kind of get to go places,
Yeah,
do
yeah,
fun stuff. What are some of the challenges as an administrator, given what we're going through right now with climate change? I mean,
yeah,
Michelle chatted a little bit about it, and I know about the invasive species. I have a friend
yeah,
that is kind of more the community educational side of the equation, very much this infamous lionfish, just as an
yeah.
example. But what are the challenges that you're seeing as an administrator, helping the science to get out of the way for the scientists to do their work? What are some of the challenges you face in smoothing the way for them to be able to do their great work?
Yeah, without any hesitation, it's having the resources really. And I view my job before I get out of the way. I need to make sure that people like Leela and Michelle and Vernon and Grace have the resources to do the job, and not just do the job, but do it well and with the level of excellence that they know they're capable of. I know they're capable of. And it breaks my heart every time we have to make tough decisions because we just don't have the resources to do everything that we feel we can do or should do, or that we're mandated to do by Congress. And I understand that in this agency, in this society, there are a lot of competing needs for resources. And at the end of the day, everyone has to make, as you go up the chain, you have to make harder decisions in this agency. I respect that and I acknowledge it. But yeah, I have to say, without any hesitation, a National Marine Sanctuary system is in dire need of additional resources to get the job done. And that is why working with partners like the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation and others to raise funding for some of the really critical work that we're doing, education and outreach, in research and monitoring and science. This is the kind of work that's going to help us really leverage the benefit of sanctuaries in addressing the challenge of climate change and other things as well.
You know, two questions come to mind,
Sure.
and I'd like to touch on both. The first being the educational side of this equation. I mean, you went to the University of South Carolina. What did you call them?
They're the Gamecocks,
The
South
Gamecocks.
Carolina,
So
the fighting Gamecocks.
fighting game. I moved from Detroit. I went to Wayne State University, and I think nobody knew what a tartar was. Nobody. They know what a Wolverine is. They know what a Spartan is. Nobody
Yeah.
knows what a tartar is. And I think they changed their logo. And I
Yeah.
went to Alabama for my first private sector job. And and you either have Alabama or you have Auburn. And I remember
Auburn. Yeah.
the director of the department that I was working with said, "Who's your allegiance to?" It wasn't, "Hi, Howard." Like, it's whoever you want it to be. So I respect that. The Gamecock, I respect that. How do you engage with the research institutions, the scientific based institutions, departments, to perhaps guide them in the work that's important? And this is going to be needed not this year, but in 5 years,
Yeah.
10 years. How's that happen?
Yeah. That I have to admit that is a big challenge because on one hand, you have to make sure that all of the research and monitoring that you're doing is focused to address not just the challenges that you have as managers today, with the challenges you're anticipating for tomorrow. However, you also have to make sure that your team has the capacity and the discipline that are focused on those challenges. And so it can be difficult taking someone that has for their whole life focused on, say, large whales, the science of large whale conservation, and shifting them to fish or seabirds, right? But that's the trick, right? As an administrator, to sit down and with as a place-based manager, as a place-based organization like ours, where we are mandated to protect and manage and conserve a place. We don't have the luxury of being able to specialize very much. And so what we generally do is we are, for the most part, generalists. We want to have our fingers in just about everything, because that's what we have to do, because we're in charge of the place, not just this species of fish or that species of marine mammal or that seabird or that shipwreck. It's the place. And so we have to do our best to hire folks that have that same ethos of being generalist and being able to shift focus from time to time, while bringing in expertise and people that do have that specific specialization from partner institutions like universities around the country. And so that's the trick. I don't know that we always get it exactly right, but we do have a lot of partnerships, again, within the academic community, but also internally within NOAA. I mean, this is where being part of an agency like NOAA is such a huge asset, because whether you're talking about meteorologists with the National Weather Service, or you're talking about fish stock biologists with the National Fisheries Service, or marine mammal biologists with the Fisheries Service, or spatial ecologists with the National Centers for Coastal and Ocean Science. I have to go on and on, by the way.
Sure.
But being part of this agency and having really great relationships, a lot of other parts of NOAA that don't have the place-based management or mission, I should say, they do look to sanctuaries to demonstrate how they can contribute to ocean conservation generally. And so we know the larger NOAA uses sanctuaries to bring in, so let's say we need to do some research on ocean acidification and the impact that climate change is having on ocean chemistry. We have a whole program in NOAA that's what they do. It's the ocean acidification program, and we have a great relationship with, they come in and will help us understand that and help us understand where that's headed in sanctuaries.
Okay. And this raises a kind of a sub part to that question. I would imagine the relationships, even back at the state level, those similar departments, there's relationships there as well that are equally as important.
Yeah, that was very true. And that was something I learned early on in my career being in government bureaucracy. Is it's so easy to get siloed in your thing that you do. But what I learned early on is you gotta try your best. The silos are always gonna, that I don't see the silos going away, but how do you work around them and through them and make sure that you create those relationships with counterparts all over the agency, so that you can kind of make sure there are a lot of win-win-win. And that's trick.
Okay.
Not always easy, but
it's like this big juggling. You're just like spinning plates to keep them all going.
Yeah.
The other question I had we've mentioned the foundation a couple times. I'd love to learn a little bit more about the Sanctuary Foundation and its role and how they are assisting you with the ongoing mission of the sanctuary system.
Yeah, I would love that. So the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation is a private, not-for-profit organization that was formed 20 plus years ago. I want to say it was 2001, maybe. And it was formed explicitly for the purpose of supporting the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation through advocacy and through raising and fundraising, right, primarily. And they have been an awesome partner over the years. As long as I've been part of NOAA, there has been a National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and it's always been great to work with them. and they do a really good job of raising awareness about what National Marine Sanctuaries are. Like, as you and I said, so many people don't know what they are. National Marine Sanctuary Foundation is a really great partner in that, and in raising awareness with Congress and across the private sector as well.
Okay. I'm going to have to circle back with Vernon, because as I learned about the foundation, I'm thinking that's a great conversation to have as well. So
yeah, I think that would be a good interview to have. I think they would welcome that, Howard.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
So when you are not working, I know you have a family, you're lots of outdoor experience and adventure.
Yeah.
Former sailor. I sailed on Lake Michigan, and maybe you had bigger boats out in the water, but
no, I don't want to leave with the impression that I was a sailor. I've been on sailboats,
other people's boats.
I would definitely not consider myself a sailor by any measure.
Yeah.
So
if it makes you feel any better, I was what they called rail meat. That's what it was. I was rail meat. I'm a big guy. When you are not working and you get a chance to enjoy nature, getting out with the family, what are your go-tos?
Yeah, great question. I would say my favorite thing to do when I'm not working is to be in the ocean with my kids, honestly. And my kids are a little bit older now. My oldest is 20.
And a 20-year-old kid?
I have yeah.
You pegged you for about 30. I pegged you for about 30.
No, this job keeps you useful. Very useful, Howard. I gotta tell you.
I love it.
I love it. I do still have a 13-year-old. So
okay.
13, 17, and 20. And just seeing their faces, because I live in a landlocked in Maryland. We don't have, as I said, I grew up in Rhode Island. I could walk down to the shore of Narragansett Bay anytime I wanted, any season I wanted, and just had that access to the salt water, to the ocean. My kids don't have that. So when we do have those opportunities, when we go up to Rhode Island to visit family, or we go to Ocean City, or I've had a chance to bring my boys down to the Florida Keys, just watching their face as they put their face under the water and see fish and crabs, and it just makes my day. I just love it. I love it. We did one time. This is what I do on vacation. One time on vacation in Rhode Island, I took my kids and all. I have 5 nieces as well in Rhode Island. I took them all for their birthdays on a whale watch in Stellwagen Bank National Sanctuary. Now I'm on vacation. This is my vacation, so I'm not on. But these are kids that grew up in Rhode Island, and they have access to the ocean as well. But don't get out, don't get exposed to these things very often. Taking them on a whale watch and watching their faces as they see a humpback whale breach, and it was just priceless. Just that exposure to the majesty of the ocean, and watching kids sort of soak that in and absorb that, it's just nothing like it. I love it.
That's fantastic. I love it too. And
yeah,
I did an episode with Paul Ceswerda. He's the director of Gotham Whale up in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's some activity going on about making part of that area part of the sanctuary system. Yeah. And I was thinking, after I was interviewing him, I'm going to be honest with you, spirit of full disclosure, I have never seen a whale up close. I've seen the little whales that are in the aquarium in Chicago, Shedd Aquarium, but I have never seen a whale. I have got it. It's like,
we got to change that, Howard. We got to change that.
I know that. Yes, we do. So let's talk a little bit about the 50th anniversary. It's pretty special. So what has the sanctuary system and the department, NOAA, what have you guys been doing to help celebrate 50 years of stewardship and conservation?
Yeah, we've been doing a number of different things. And so we actually have, this is one of the areas where we have a really great partnership with the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. We have a campaign that we're calling Celebrate Spectacular, and we're sort of co-branding it with them. And it's just a number of different things that we're doing over the course of the year, starting this past October to this coming October, when our actual 50th anniversary is. And we're doing things. We have a commemorative poster series that we're putting out. We're partnering, we're partnering with the Postal Service to do a stamp series celebrating the 50th anniversary of the National Marine Sanctuary System, which is really cool.
Very
So
cool.
we're going to be unveiling that in Santa Cruz, California, I believe in August, if I'm not mistaken. We're doing a bunch of webinars. We have a bunch of in-person activities. We're doing some paddles in places like Mallow Bay, one of our newer National Marine Sanctuaries here in Maryland. Just a number of activities and things like that to celebrate and to raise awareness as well. But yeah, it is an exciting time. But I should say, for me personally, as director, I enjoy celebrating, and that's great, and we should do it. But for me, it's really more about looking to the future.
Right.
And I don't know if this was your next question, but it's really about where do we go from here? Not about necessarily looking backward, but we need to do that. But really, where are we going from here? And we've identified a few themes of things that they're almost existential questions about who we are as a program and where we're going. And those themes are diversity, equity, access, and inclusion. I mean, we've recognized, Howard, that we need to be more representative of the communities that we serve. We need, and I don't mean that in just our workforce. Yes, our workforce needs to be more representative of the communities they serve, and it's not in many places. But it's really about the accessibility and the relevance of what we do, whether you're talking about our regulatory programs, our management, our advisory council system, our education programs, our research and monitoring, all need to be relevant and accessible to all of these communities. Because if they're not, right, then why should they care, right? Why should they care about these National Marine Sanctuaries, some of which are in their backyard?
Right.
And I tell this story. Sorry, I was just in Stellwagen Bank, visiting our staff up there in Boston. I just got back this morning, so that's in front of mind. But we have a program with Lawrence. It's a predominantly Hispanic community called Lawrence, Massachusetts, with a predominantly Dominican population. And many of the folks there in Lawrence, Massachusetts, did not even realize that there was a Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, right? But what was really cool was we got a grant together internally and funded a bunch of kids from Lawrence, Massachusetts, and their teachers to go out on a whale watch and experience the majesty that my nieces and my kids and experience humpback whales breaching and basking sharks feeding and great shearwaters diving in the water. But what was really cool about that is we got to tell the story that in a way that was relevant, because many of the whales that are there in the summer feeding in Stellwagen Bay in the summer are in the Dominican Republic in the winter breeding in Canada.
Right.
And so you make these connections with people and it sinks in, and then you have the opportunity for someone to say, hey, I could see myself in that career someday. Or I could see myself in a career in ocean conservation more generally. So these are the kinds of things that we need to be working on. We also need to be thinking more deeply and respectfully about our relationship with tribes and indigenous communities around the country. And this is something that we're really, really focused on right now across the National Marine Sanctuary system is how do we honor the fact that many of these places where we're newcomers, right? Even in the Florida Keys or Monterey Bay, there have been people that have been managing these places for tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of years, right? And so how do we honor that? How do we connect with that and do a much better job of recognizing that? And then finally, it's climate change. You mentioned it. We have to recognize that the ocean is changing, that the places that we're responsible for changing, and we have to make sure that our management approach is keeping pace with climate change. And so these things taken together are things that we're really thinking deeply about and in trying to reinvent the sanctuary system going forward.
No, I love that. And as you had rightly shared, I mean, looking back and what you've succeeded, what your successes have been, the challenges, where you're at today, you've achieved this great milestone, 50 years, but there's a future path that we have to look towards, and
Right.
what's important. And you've laid out three very specific items that are worthy and should be considered. And hopefully in 100 years, we can look back. How do we do? You know,
Yeah,
how do we do?
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I just think it's just amazing. And I think I had shared this with Vernon in our conversation. I never knew. I mean, I've been to the Keys once. I remember going diving off a Marathon Key. I have been to the Great Barrier Reef and snorkeled. I never, and I know there's, growing up in Michigan, I know there's shipwrecks all around the Great Lakes. I never knew, though, that there were national marine sanctuaries, these national parks. And that was just the big eye opener when we're having this conversation at the OWAA virtual meeting. And I just think it's amazing where they're located, what their mission is. Like you say, it's a location based entity, and all the things that go into making it, keeping it safe, educating people about it's here. This is what we do. Here's is why you should care about it. And it's just an amazing story. And I just think it's wonderful. And so again, I'm very appreciative that I get to do what I do, chat with you, Vernon, and Michelle and the others, and just really, I think it's phenomenal. It's fantastic. Before we head out, John, what I would love to do is a segment that I do almost every episode on the Outdoor Adventure Series or even Success Insight podcast, is to ask my guest first about an aha moment. And I can imagine some of yours, but an aha moment is when you kind of take a snapshot, look back, oh my God, I get to do this, or I was at this event, or I did something, or I saw something that really it communicates the impact of the work you do. And it's like, wow, what would be
Mm.
your aha moment? Take a deep breath, count to five.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, there are, like I said at the beginning, I really do believe I have, excuse me, if not the coolest job in the federal government, top class,
Right.
right? And so there were a lot of moments over the course of my career at NOAA that I could point to, whether it's diving on historic shipwrecks in Thunder Bay, or diving in American Samoa on the largest coral head in the world, or the kelp forest in Channel Islands, or watching humpback whales breach in Stellwagen Bay. Those things are all really awesome, and they definitely are energizing moments. But I would say if I had to pick a moment, and I think you're forcing me to, I would say it was about maybe 7, 8 years ago. I was in American Samoa on the island of Aunu'u, and we were in a community meeting in the Fale, and we're sitting on the ground, and the entire meeting is taking place in Samoan. And my folks are trying to help to translate as best they can. But even if I didn't understand every word of what was being discussed, the relevance that the National Marine Sanctuary of American Samoa had to a community like Aunu'u, and a community that is so in touch with its ancestral past, and how the connection that the sanctuary has in supporting that community, in supporting its well-being going forward into the future. That's where really just kind of what it just sunk in for me. It just said, yeah, it's about the whales, and it's about the fish, and it's about the shipwrecks, but it's also about these communities of all different shapes and sizes and languages, and just sitting there and listening to that and participating in that meeting was really, really impactful on me. It's something I'll never forget. And it's something that really just helped me internalize what it means to be a community-based program and the impact that that has on the people we serve.
I love that. And what comes to mind is you recognize that you're a part of a system, so to speak. You have the system of NOAA, of the National Marine Sanctuaries, of the parks, of, as you had shared earlier, there's fish, there's the corals, there's the birds. But what you had just talked about is the community and the impact. So if a little wave starts in off the coast of Africa is a system and it turns into a big storm. So
Yeah.
the activity
Right.
of what you are all doing at the National Marine Sanctuary, it's a live system. It
Yeah.
includes a lot of moving parts, and I love the fact that you shared that. So thank you.
Yeah. My pleasure.
The last piece I would love if you could do, I mean, again, you've made a career working and serving in government, state level, national level. You've had a lot of great experiences. You've just shared one, the aha moment. What type of advice would you give perhaps someone who wanted to make a career of public service, or maybe it's an organization like the foundation or a local organization that's caring about the Florida key conservation and
Mhm.
planting corals? What insight would you give to them about keep at it, follow your dream? What would that insight to go be for you?
Yeah, I mean, part of me wants to first start by not answering your question and just saying, turn it around to people like me. And I think there's people like me that have a duty to be mentors to people that are coming in the next generation. So I would first just say all of the career folks that are in ocean conservation now, be they government or nonprofit, I think they have an obligation and a duty to go out and find these people and be accessible to these people. So I'll start there. But to
Yeah.
answer your question, I would say persistence really pays off and really just showing up. And so I would encourage folks to take advantage of as many opportunities as they can to get their name out there, to get their face known, to show up at meetings, to take that internship. For us in sanctuaries, one of the best ways to get out there is to be on our advisory council. And so we go to an advisory council meeting, get on the advisory council. There are lots of opportunities at the state and local level and then for nonprofits. So just keep at it. And just one really cool story I have to share before in the sort of in the spirit of persistence is there was a woman that approached. Every year we have the event with the National Sanctuary Foundation called Capitol Hill Ocean Week. It's usually in June. We just had it a couple of weeks ago for this year. And this woman, Katie Denman, works for National Sanctuaries now. She's our advisory council coordinator at headquarters. I had never met her before. She kind of cornered me at a meeting at Chow several years ago and just gave me her card, asked for mine, and said, "I'm going to work for you one day. Here's my background. Here's what I want to do." And here she is, right? And so she kept at it. She kept being persistent, and I think that's the kind of thing that it takes to get into a lot of different fields, not just ocean conservation. But that would be my advice.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I love this. I love that example. I mean, you've got to be persistent. And I don't care if you're not comfortable networking. If you want to make a career or something or pursue a passion, you've got to lean in. So I love that example.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I
Agreed.
know we're coming close to your witching hour because you got to play director. Before we head out, real quickly, John, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where are the best places for them to go?
Yeah, we have a really fantastic website that has so much good information on it, sanctuaries.noaa.gov. And then we're also on all of the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, etc. So that's really the best place to get on there. On our website, there's also a big section on the 50th anniversary of the sanctuary system. I have a blurb in there specific to me. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about my path, there's some information about me there in there, but really about the sanctuaries, the website and our social media is a great place to go. We have very talented people putting that website together. So when you get on there, you're going to be blown away because they do awesome work.
I was blown away. I have to share when I first visited the website, like, oh my God. Because I always ask my guests, especially in the outdoor space, for photos to include in our show notes. And it's like, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Very awesome. So we're going to provide the backlinks to the website, sanctuaries.noaa.gov, as well as to your social sites. We'll provide also the backlinks to you and the media that are on the site, the 50th anniversary message, as well as the historical foundation of what the National Marine Sanctuaries is doing. And we'll also have a backlink to the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation for that. John, it has been a pleasure. I'm so glad, grateful that you were able to take some time away from your busy schedule to join us here. And really, I'm really feel gratitude for being able to help celebrate the 50th anniversary of the National Marine Sanctuaries.
My pleasure, Howard. I really appreciate you doing this. These places are all offshore, out of sight, out of mind. So people like you spreading the word is so critical. And I am equally grateful to your time and your focus on this. So thank you so much.
Fantastic. Listen, stay on the line. We're going to do a quick close and you and I can have a final chat. Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, I mean, if you're not blown away by this episode with John Armour, director of the NOAA's Office of the National Marine Sanctuaries, we've learned about his background, how he got his career got started, and just his passion around the mission of the sanctuary system, and really all the people, the professionals, the scientists, the educators, the down all the way to the community and everything that's going on to help keep this area, these national marine sanctuaries. So these are sanctuaries I didn't even know existed before this program started. And I mean, I'm like, okay, I want to go visit now. How do I do that? But you know, what a great episode. Lots of insights, aha moments. I mean, can you imagine sitting around with native residents in a sanctuary that's out in the middle of the ocean somewhere on an island, and you're having the conversation translated for you, and you realize something, this is much bigger than just me. And what an insight there and an aha moment. And there's just so many ways for you to get involved and learn more about the sanctuaries, whether it's again locally here in the United States within our 50 contiguous states, but wherever these sanctuaries exist, you should learn more about it and figure out how can I support the cause, and maybe your kids, your grandkids are going to be able to sit back and look at the 100-year anniversary of the National Marine Sanctuary. So again, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Now you can find us on, well, before I do that, we are going to again provide the backlinks to the website, sanctuaries.noaa.gov, as well as the social sites, the couple links to John in the media, the 50th anniversary message, as well as the historical foundation of the sanctuary. And we're also, again, going to provide the link to the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. As for us, you can find us on the Outdoor Adventure Series website, outdooradventureseries.com. We are also on Facebook and on LinkedIn on our Outdoor Adventure Series pages. We also have a YouTube channel devoted to the Outdoor Adventure Series episodes. We're slowly migrating all of our Success Insight related episodes over to the Outdoor Adventure Series, but little by little, the content is going to be showing up. And of course, we are on every podcast directories that you need to know about. And so you can go out there as well. So wherever you hear this episode or any other episode, like it, share it, comment on it. And really, we hope these conversations like today with John are helping to move you in directions that where you're going to make a difference today, tomorrow, and a year, 10 years from now. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day, and we will see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.